sky wasn't supposed to burn. It's not here. Not on Alarissa, peaceful moon covered in soft grass, glowing lakes, and sky-hanging trees that drifted gently in the wind like floating feathers. For 1,000 years it was untouched by war. Quiet sanctuary for thinkers, dreamers, and those who had no weapons, only books and songs. But now, that very sky was on fire. Purple clouds turned black, stars fell like broken glass, and screams rose across the plains as the invaders descended, silent, merciless, and unstoppable. No one knew their name, only what survivors whispered. In fear, the Hollow. Taya had never heard of the Hollow until they came. She was a linguist, a translator of old languages from forgotten systems. She believed in culture, not conflict. But none of her words mattered now. Her people ran across the fields, clutching children, dragging the old, praying to any god that would still listen. The Hollow ships cracked the sky open, releasing storms of black drones that moved like insects, but killed like machines. Everything they touched vanished, disintegrated into nothing but dust and silence. The capital dome of Alaris fell first. 1 second, it glowed with life. The next, it imploded with a strange ripple of light. No sound, just sudden death. It was then they knew. They were not being invaded, they were being erased. The refugee fleet wasn't built for escape. It was meant for science, research, short travel, but they had no choice. Thousands pushed into overcrowded ships, some barely holding together, some leaving others behind. Taya boarded with her younger brother Mikkel, who hadn't spoken since. Their parents were taken by the drones. His hands shook the entire time, his eyes wide with a terror she couldn't calm. The ship lifted off, just as the land cracked behind them. Below, the grass turned black, the lakes boiled, and shadows moved, like living nightmares. A piece of Alaris exploded behind them, sending fire into the sky that followed them up-haul, most as if the moon itself was trying to cling to the fleeing as they entered deep space. Ah! The fleet split apart. One ship lost engines. Another simply vanished off the sensors, swallowed by something unseen. Taya's ship, the Emberlight, received a final signal from the last functioning outpost. All known civilizations have fallen. No safe system left. One option remains: humanity. Cold silence filled the command deck. Humanity. That name was not spoken often in the central systems. Not because they were forgotten, but because they were feared. Long ago, humans had been labeled Deathworlders, a species born on a planet so hostile it should have killed them in infancy. Earth, they called it. A world of storms, beasts, toxic air, violent weather, and predators everywhere. But somehow they survived. Then they left Earth, carrying their survival instincts with them. Every interaction with other species ended. The same violence, dominance, and then retreat. Humanity didn't seek empires. They didn't want alliances. They built massive ships, floating fortresses armed to the teeth, and vanished into deep space, choosing exile over diplomacy. No one had heard from them in over 2 generations. But now, Taya's people had no choice. The Hollow was spreading. World after world had fallen. Even the war races like the Varnok and the Zel Dominion had been crushed. If they couldn't stop the Hollow, then maybe, just maybe, the monsters of Earth could. Captain Sorel, a 4-armed tactician from the Moonborn caste, issued the course. The fleet was already down to 6 ships. They would enter the Grave Sector, a dead part of the galaxy, where no signals returned. That's where humanity vanished. If they were still alive, they'd be there. The journey was long, quiet, full of grief. Every corridor of the Emberlight echoed with sobs and whispers. The crew took turns watching the stars, counting the blinking distress beacons of dying worlds they passed. Mikkel stopped speaking completely, clinging to Taya's side like a shadow. Oxygen filters strained. Taya dreamed of shadows in the shape of teeth. Then, they found them. The fleet dropped out of warp near the edge of a black star system with no name. Empty. Lifeless. But then, the sensors screamed. Shadows moved in the dark, massive structures hiding behind moons and debris fields. One by one, Lights appeared. Ships. Yes, but not like anything Taya had ever seen. Giant. Ugly. Not graceful like the alien vessels of the Central Systems. These were brutal, covered in weapons. Their hulls were scarred and armored, their forms jagged and sharp like metal beasts from another age. One moved past them slowly. It was larger than a city. Its engines pulsed like a heartbeat. And its name flickered on their scanners in the human tongue. HS Revenant. A signal came through. Not in a soft voice. Not with diplomacy or welcome. Just 5 words, cold and flat. Identify, or be destroyed now. Panic rose. Captain Sorrell tried to answer in standard galactic code. Nothing. Taya stepped forward. She spoke into the mic, using one of the human languages she had studied long ago, forgotten. Ancient English. "We are refugees," she said carefully. "We request asylum. We are not infected." A long pause. Then finally, a voice returned. It was male, deep, calm, but something about it made everyone freeze. "You are entering Deathworld space. If you proceed, you follow our law. No return, no diplomacy. You leave only in a body bag." Everyone turned to the captain. She hesitated, then nodded. Tia felt a chill deep in her spine as their ship moved forward. One of the massive human ships, the HS Harbinger, opened its docking bay. The doors alone were the size of mountains. Inside, glowing red lights marked landing zones. Dozens of human figures waited, armored from head to toe, unmoving weapons in hand. Their faces were hidden behind black helmets with glowing eyes. Not one blinked. Not one moved. The ember light entered slowly as they landed. The ship door opened, and the cold air of the human vessel swept through. It smelled like metal and oil and smoke, heavy, thick, alive. Mikhail clung to her tighter. Taya stepped forward. Heart pounding, one of the human soldiers raised his weapon slightly, but didn't aim. Instead, he spoke. "Welcome to hell." And then, the door slammed shut behind them. The refugees had entered the Deathworld, and the hollow was still coming. The heavy door behind them closed with a loud mechanical thud that echoed through their bones. It didn't sound like any normal seal. It sounded final, like the crushing gates of a tomb locking in the living. The Ember Light's passengers stood, frozen, faces pale, eyes darting across the cold steel chamber of the human hangar. Shadows danced along the tall walls, cast by red emergency lights and the slow, deliberate movements of the human soldiers watching them. Not a single human smiled. Not one showed their face. They stood in thick, jagged armor, black like ash, with crimson visors glowing in the shape of slits like hunting beasts that never stopped stalking. Tay felt Miko press against her side. Trembling again, she didn't blame him. She wanted to tremble too. Every instinct told her they had made a mistake. These weren't rescuers. These were executioners waiting for an excuse. And yet what choice had they truly had? A voice came from above, crackling from unseen speakers, deep and sharp. Like a blade being dragged across metal. "You are now aboard the HS Harbinger. By entering, you have accepted Deathworld law. Violations are punishable by forced removal. We do not remove the living." There was a pause. "Then you have 5 minutes to disembark and submit to screening." Captain Sorrell stepped forward, lifting her head high, even though her skin twitched with unease. "We are not sick," she said, her voice strong but wary. "We fled the hollow. We carry no infection." The closest human soldier didn't speak. Instead, he raised a strange device, long, black, and covered in blinking lights. A moment later, a pulse shot out, sweeping across the entire group. A vibration passed through their bodies, cold, sharp, and oddly invasive. Mikhail gasped and held his stomach. Others groaned or stumbled. Then the device beeped twice. "Clean," said the soldier. Then he turned and walked away. No greeting. Number. Instructions. No compassion. A low mechanical rumble filled the hangar as the floor beneath them shifted. A hidden path unfolded, an automatic walkway leading deeper into the belly of the human ship. The walls moved with it, closing behind them, separating them from the Ember Light. like herding cattle into a tunnel. Like prey being guided into a den, they walked in silence. The hallway was massive, clearly built for people larger than most. Species. It pulsed with dim orange light. Pipes hissed above them. Strange markings covered the walls, human warning signs. Most unreadable to Taya, except for one that repeated every few meters. Secure area, nitrogen matern. Eventually, the corridor opened into a large chamber, part command room, part security. Checkpoint. Dozens of humans sat at stations, watching them through armored glass. Not a single one spoke to them directly. Their screens flickered with strange data, biological scans, threat assessments, and blinking red symbols. Taya spotted one label flashing on a console. Potential host species, low threat level, admittance, temporary. The group was split by age, gender, species type. Taya and Miko were sent into a smaller room with two humans, one of whom finally removed her helmet. She was pale-skinned, hair tightly pulled back, face blank as stone. "Name," she said coldly. "Taya," she replied, voice soft. "Relation? He's my brother. Mikkel. He's just a child." The woman looked at Mikkel. Her expression didn't change. No signs of stress infection. Heart rate elevated but within bounds. No psychic activity. No vocal anomalies. She paused, then added, "No hollow trace." Taya felt her breath return. "You'll be quartered in Deck 11. You leave that deck, you'll be shot. You enter restricted zones, you'll be erased. You monitor everything, every breath, every word. There is no diplomacy. There is no appeal." Tia blinked. What do you want from us?" The woman leaned forward slightly. "Nothing. We want you to survive. That's it." Then she stood and nodded toward the door as they were escorted. "Away," Mikkel whispered his first words in days. "Why don't they smile?" Taya couldn't answer. The path to Deck 11 was long. The further they went, the more the atmosphere changed. The air was colder, the walls darker, and there were signs of things, scars in the metal, deep, jagged claw marks, burned sections. One corridor was sealed off entirely by blast doors and marked with red paint. "Do not enter. Still active." Still active. When they reached Deck 11, they found rows of narrow living pods barely big enough to lie down. No windows. No color. Just steel. A small screen blinked in each room with messages in dozens of languages. "Do not run. Do not fight. Do not disobey." As the refugees settled, the silence deepened. No one spoke much. Not because they didn't want to, but because even the ship listened. Every time someone muttered something strange, a camera moved. Every whisper echoed louder than it should have. Ow! The ship wasn't just metal and wires. It felt aware. That night, Taya sat in her pod, watching Mikkel sleep. Her hand brushed against the wall, and to her shock, she felt warmth beneath the cold steel. A heartbeat, just for a moment. Then it vanished. The next morning, something changed. A siren echoed short, sharp. But powerful, then came a voice over the ship-wide speakers. This time, it wasn't cold. It wasn't robotic. It sounded like a human man, older, gravel in his throat. "All non-human guests, this is Commander Rourke. You've survived longer than expected. You're not welcome, but you're not enemies. Yet, so listen closely. Stay where you belong. We'll feed you. We'll protect you. But if you cross us, we don't do prisons. We do graves." He paused. "And if you think we're the scariest thing in this system, look out the window." Taya turned. For the first time, she saw the view outside. A hollow scout swarmed dozens of sharp, twisting black vessels hovered in the void nearby, watching, waiting. But they didn't attack. Why? Then she saw them. 5 more human ships, bigger than anything she'd ever seen. Not just floating, but aimed. "Locked in. Ready," she whispered, barely audible. "They're afraid." "Of us?" "No," came a voice from behind her, one of the human guards now stationed in the refugee deck. They're afraid of them. And for the first time, Taya understood. They hadn't entered safety. It entered humanity's hunting ground. And they were now part of the bait. The walls were breathing again. It wasn't just Tia's imagination. She'd touched metal all her life, studied ancient ships, broken war engines, the hollow bones of derelict colonies drifting in dead systems. But never had she felt this. The walls of Deck 11, where the refugees were confined, didn't just hum with machinery. They pulsed faintly, like lungs beneath the steel, a rhythm too slow to be mechanical, too organic. At first, everyone ignored it. Maybe the ship was damaged. Maybe it was some kind of reactor vibration. But by the third day, whispers began, the kind that crept into sleeping minds, the kind that pulled open old childhood fears. And then the child vanished. His name was Keeler, only 9 cycles old. He was playing quietly near the ration dispenser, building tiny towers from empty wrappers. His mother looked away for 1 minute, just one. When she turned back, he was gone. No scream, no sound. The cameras didn't see him leave. The door hadn't opened. He simply vanished. Taya was one of the first to respond. She rushed to the command terminal and activated the distress request panel, a feature the humans had said was for non-fatal emergencies only. It flashed red. No one came. 30 minutes passed. Then finally, a team arrived. 6 humans. All in full armor, weapons drawn. They didn't ask questions. They didn't comfort the mother. They didn't look shocked. They just scanned the room with hard eyes, ignoring the crying refugees. And one of them finally said the words that froze Tyus's blood. Another one. Another one? The lead human, a tall, silent man with a scarred helmet, issued orders in clipped military code. His name was Sergeant Kell. Taya caught the gist: search teams, thermal scans, hull breach sweeps. But something in the tone felt wrong, like he already knew the outcome. Taya stepped forward, heart pounding. What's happening? Where did the child go? Kell turned slowly to her. She felt like she'd just stepped in front of a predator. He didn't answer directly. He just said, "Stay in your room tonight. Don't open the doors. No matter what you hear." That night, the ship changed. It started with the lights, flickering just slightly. Then came the sound, something deep beneath the floor.
Not a mechanical
thrum, not an engine noise. A growl, long, slow, like something big, very big, shifting in its sleep. Mikkel sat upright in his pod, eyes wide. "Taya, there's something in the walls." Taya didn't answer. She couldn't, because she felt it too, and worse. She'd seen something. When the hallway lights blinked off for a second, she'd glimpsed a shape. Tall, thin, wrong, standing near the ventilation shaft. And when the light returned, it was gone. She checked the vent. It was open. Elsewhere on the ship, the humans were mobilizing, not in panic. In preparation, like this had happened before, entire corridors were locked down. Sealed doors hissed with heavy hydraulic thuds. Refugee zones were reinforced. All non-humans were confined. 2 quarters. "For your safety," said the announcement. But the voices giving the orders didn't sound afraid. They sounded angry. "Commander." Rourke's voice echoed again over the ship-wide comms, this time filled with a grim warning. Decks 9 through 12 containment status activated. No personnel. Movement outside designated areas. Canal threat protocol has been triggered. Fire teams, prepare to engage. As civilians remain silent. This is not a drill. A few brave refugees tried to ask questions. They were ignored. Then the screaming started. 1 corridor over, someone shouted for help. A wet tearing sound followed. Then silence. A guard ran past Taya's door. He didn't come back. Taya wrapped her arms around Mikkel as he buried his face. "In her chest. Is it the hollow?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "This is something else." An hour later, the humans returned. Their armor was covered in dark liquid, not blood. Something black and oily that hissed when it touched metal. They dragged two bodies out, twisted beyond recognition. Taya caught a glimpse through the cracked visor of one helmet. The face was wrong. Not entirely human anymore. It clicked in her mind then. Another one. These weren't refugee children getting lost. Something was taking them. Something inside. The ship, she cornered Sergeant Kell when he returned. Forced herself to speak through the fear. You knew. You knew this would happen. Kell didn't deny it. There are things buried in this ship, he said quietly, his voice low enough that even the walls couldn't hear. Things from Earth. From wars your people never read about. Projects that were locked away because even we feared what we created. She asked. He looked at her. For the first time, she saw his face. Young, tired, haunted. Because they scare the hollow. Tia's breath caught. Kell continued. You don't get it, we're not safe either. Passengers, same as you. Ship the Harbinger. Not just a warship, it's a tomb. And sometimes, the dead wake up. She wanted to scream. To run. There was nowhere to go. No way out. That night. The refugees heard footsteps above their quarters. Slow, heavy. Not boots, claws. And in the dim light of the corridor, shadow passed the security glass. It was tall, human-shaped, but it had too many joints. It tilted. The wrong way. And its eyes glowed not red like the soldiers, but white. Bright white. Like stars before collapse, the cameras didn't record it. The doors didn't stop it. But it didn't attack it. Watched, and then it whispered in a voice like burning paper. Don't pray. No gods here. Only fire. The next morning, the child returned, Keller, alive. Unharmed. But his eyes were glowing white. They thought the child was saved, when Keeler stumbled into the corridor outside the sleeping pods. Barefoot and silent, his mother screamed with joy and dropped to her knees. She pulled him close, kissing his face, her tears soaking into his. Tunic, but Keeler didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't blink, only stared at the wall's eyes, glowing pale white, like frost-lit moons. Taya saw it first, the way his breath didn't fog in the cold air, the way his feet didn't leave. Prints on the steel floor, the way his shadow didn't quite match his shape. Keeler wasn't the same. The human soldiers arrived seconds later. They didn't knock. They didn't warn. They came in fast, weapons drawn, their boots pounding down the corridor with brutal force. They surrounded the boy without hesitation. His mother screamed again, but this time in fear. He's my son. He's fine. Don't you touch him. Taya moved forward, trying to reason with them. He's just a child. He's scared. He needs medical help. Sergeant Kell stepped between her and the child. Back off, he growled. But that's not a child anymore. Then one of the soldiers pointed his scanner. At KEELOR. The screen flashed red. Entity classified code. REV09. Internal presence detected. Kell didn't even blink. Contain it. A sound like thunder echoed as the containment field activated. A shimmering cage of blue light locking around the boy. His body lifted off the ground slightly, suspended unmoving. Then the whispering started. Faint at first, like dozens of voices speaking through Keeler's mouth at once. Words no one could understand. Taya clutched Meekel's hand. The air grew colder. Lights flickered, and every human soldier raised their weapon not at the child but at the walls. Kell turned and barked into his coms. Code 10 confirmed. We've got a walker. Possible contact from Subdeck 6, requesting access override immediately. Negative, came the reply. Subdeck 6 remains sealed. You know why? Kell cursed under his breath. Taya stepped back, eyes wide. What's Subdeck 6? Kell looked at her grimly. Where the dead crew sleeps, before Taya could respond. Alarms began blaring through the ship. But they weren't the normal emergency tones. They were deeper, older, and worse. They were coming from inside the Harbinger, not from command. The lights turned red. A metal voice crackled through the speakers, one not heard before. Warning, internal breach detected. Origin, Subdeck 6. Doors compromised. Initiate cleansing protocol. Kel's eyes went wide. How the hell did it open? The lights above flickered and then, all at once, everything went black. Total silence followed. Then came the footsteps. Not from the hallway. From inside the walls, Taya froze. The sound wasn't human. It was too slow, too heavy. Like someone dragging broken limbs across metal. The walls vibrated with every step. Screams echoed from nearby corridors. A soldier cursed, turning his weapon toward a vent. Contact right, and then it hit. The thing that crawled out wasn't alive. It had once worn a human suit, tattered. Pieces of armor still clung to its broken form, but its flesh was wrong. Split open, pulsing with strange light. Its face was a cracked skull. Jaw distended, wires spilling from its mouth. It moved like a puppet held up by invisible strings. No emotion. No hesitation. It grabbed a soldier and slammed him into the wall hard enough to break bone. The scream died before it left his lips. Chaos exploded. The Harbinger became a battlefield again. Gunfire lit the halls. Ataya grabbed Mikkel and pulled him behind a panel as bullets sliced past. The humans fought with discipline, but whatever had come out of Subdeck 6 didn't fall easy. When one was shot down, another took its place, limping forward like a corpse refusing to stay dead. Kel shouted over the gunfire, "Pull back!" Them to the core ring. Taya didn't understand the command, but she followed anyway. More soldiers joined, forming a shield wall around the refugees. One by one, they guided them through half-lit tunnels, deeper into the Harbinger's central systems as they ran. They passed signs of the past. Old bloodstains, scorched walls, names etched into metal with fingernails. "We died down here." "We're still listening." Mikkel tugged at her sleeve. "Taya." The boy, he's still floating. She looked back. Keeler was still in the containment field, drifting through the carnage. Untouched by bullets, untouched by monsters. The infected ignored him, as if they recognized him. No, as if he commanded them. Taya's blood ran cold. The core ring was different. It was circular, massive, filled with machinery that glowed with strange green pulses. Dozens of human engineers worked there, scarred, silent, clearly ready to die at their posts. A reinforced gate sealed behind them. As the last refugee stumbled through, Kel turned to the chief engineer. "Lock it and purge the level. You'll lose the deck. It's already lost." Taya pulled Kel aside. "What are those?" "Things." Kel stared through the glass at the writhing darkness beyond. Ghosts. Soldiers from before the Hollow. Weapons made during the last Earth War. Experimental units. When Earth was dying, we tried to build men who couldn't die. "And you did?" "No," Kel said. "We failed. We built men who forgot how to live." The room trembled. Explosions rocked the corridor. The gate groaned but held. Fire sprayed from overhead pipes. A klaxon screamed louder now. The engineer slammed the final sequence. Cleansing protocol activated. Reactor flood in T-minus 10 seconds. A low hum began building. Bright light filled the viewing ports. Kel whispered to himself, "God forgive us," then corrected it. "No, there are no gods here. Only fire." The blast tore through Deck 12. Everything beyond the gate vanished in a burst of white. When it ended, there was silence. The dead crew was gone, but Keeler's body remained still. Floating, still watching, and now smiling. The Harbinger screamed. Not the ship's alarms. Not the walls. The ship itself. Sound of metal grinding against willpower, a fury channeled through hull and circuits. Lights across the core ring pulsed blood red as the Harbinger began its transformation. Every bolt, every panel, every system reconfigured. This was no longer a warship. This was no longer a place of sanctuary. The Harbinger was now a weapon, a living spear, and its target was the Hollow Queen. Taya could barely stand. The vibrations on the floor rattled through her bones. Mikkel held onto her leg, sobbing. Around them, refugees were either cowering or praying, some screamed. Others stared blankly, their minds breaking under the weight of fear and noise. The Hollow had breached multiple levels now. Internal, comes reported combat in 6 sections. Drones were dying. Soldiers were dying. And still, the hollow came. Sergeant Kell stood in the center of it all like a statue, calm, furious, silent, but even. He looked up when the voice came through the ship's internal system. Core alignment at 87%. Target locked. Main cannon charging. Commander. Rourke's voice followed. Activate Subject 0. Authorization code. Revenant protocol. The room went silent. Every human in the chamber froze. Some turned their heads slowly toward Kell. Others didn't move at all, as if afraid to even breathe. A deep, ancient fear crept into their eyes. Not the fear of death, but of what they had buried. Taya stepped forward. What's? Subject 0? Kell didn't answer. He walked to a console near the center of the ring. He inserted his aden chip. The floor shook again, this time not from enemy fire. From below. A circular hatch at the far end of the core ring began to open. Gas hissed out in clouds. Terrible pressure filled the room, like gravity had thickened. Something was rising, and then it did. He emerged slowly, lifted by a sealed platform, held in a cage of reinforced steel and energy fields. Amano. Taller than Kell, but broader, built like the bones of a dying star. He wore no armor. His skin was covered in old scars. His eyes were closed. Tubes ran into his neck, his spine, his skull. His fists were clenched, carved into his chest. Burned with metal sealant were 3 words, born to burn. Mikkel whispered, Is he a human? No, Kell said quietly. Used to be. The containment lifted. The man didn't fall. He floated. His eyes opened. There was no iris, no pupil. Only white flame. Kell stepped forward. Subject 0. Do you remember your name? The man looked around slowly. Ace. His voice, when it came, was gravel and thunder wrapped in breath. Wartea felt something deep inside her fracture. What is he? She asked. A revenant, Kell replied. A weapon from Earth's final war, enhanced nerves, carbonized bone, brain chemistry fused with rage-based accelerants. He can't feel pain, can't disobey orders. He's not just a killer, he's a plague with a name. Why would you build something like that? To fight things like them? Before Taya could respond, alarms screamed again. Hull breach command deck. Hollow Queen boarding signature confirmed. The Queen was here. Kell didn't hesitate. Pointed to Subject 0. Unleash him. The Harbinger's internal systems. Released the last lock. Subject 0 dropped to the floor. His feet hit metal with a crack. No echo, no hesitation. He began to walk. Each step sent pulses through the steel. The ship moved with him, clearing paths, opening sealed hatches, lining bulkheads to his direction. And the hollow came to meet him. They poured through the ventilation shafts, exploded from floor panels, dropped from the ceilings twisting. Forms of bone and black matter. Blades for arms. Mouths without faces. They shrieked in dozens of languages, none of them known. Dozens of them, then hundreds, swarming through the Harbinger's inner levels like a tidal wave of rot. Subject 0. Walked through them, no weapon in hand, just his fists and his fury. One hollow leaped from the ceiling. He caught it midair and crushed it like wet clay. Another lunged with a spear limb. He twisted its arm off and used it to shatter the next. His body moved with impossible speed, like time bent around him. Every blow splattered the walls with hollow blood. Wherever he passed, they stopped chasing the others. They ran from him. Kell watched the combat feed, jaw clenched. He's not going to stop. Taya stared at the feed, speechless. What happens when he reaches the Queen? Kell didn't answer, because no one knew. The Hollow Queen arrived, at last floating through a shattered corridor. Her body half machine, half something else. She had no legs, just a mass of swirling black limbs that pulsed with thought. Dozens of eyes rotated across her crown. She didn't speak, but every refugee heard her in their heads a scream, made of sorrow and malice and endless hunger. Then Subject 0 arrived. The Queen turned to him, and paused, just for a second. Then she attacked. What followed wasn't a battle, it was apocalypse. Wrapped in steel, the queen struck with beams of thought and matter. She tried to melt his skin. She tried to break his spine with gravity waves. He didn't dodge. He didn't even flinch. He charged, grabbed her neck, and for the first time, the Hollow Queen screamed out loud. Outside the ship, the swarm scattered. The other hollow vessels began pulling away, disorganized, afraid. On the Harbinger, the main cannon charged Commander Rourke barked into the Revenant. Locked in melee with the Queen? Cannon status? Ready? Fire? Outside, the front of the Harbinger lit up. The energy beam was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It was white-hot destruction. It tore across space like a lance of pure extinction, ripping through the Queen's carrier, through the hollow spawn. Vessels, through the black of the stars. No sound, just light. Light that screamed. On board, the power flickered. Subject Zero emerged from the wreckage of the Queen's body, smoldering, burned, bleeding, and still walking. He looked toward the bridge, then said just one word. Next, the Hollow was retreating, but they would return, and now they knew. Humanity had monsters too. The silence after the purge was worse than the screams. Everything beyond the reinforced gate had been wiped clean. Deck 12 reduced to scorched metal and melted steel. The reactor surge had done its job. No movement remained. No corpses. No bodies to bury. Just smoke that clung to the air like the final breath of the dead. And even as the alarms faded and the tremble of the explosion disappeared into stillness, something in the air felt wrong. Tade couldn't look away from. The floating child, Keeler's body drifted gently in the center of the command ring. His small frame untouched by fire, his white glowing eyes dimmed now to a soft pulse. He hadn't spoken since the blast. Hadn't moved. But the way he smiled, that slight curve, too calm, too knowing, felt like a message meant for something. Far beyond the steel walls of the Harbinger, Mikhail huddled against Taya's side, face pale, eyes locked on the boy. "He's not like us anymore," he whispered. Toya nodded slowly. "What?" "He's not." Sergeant Kell stood nearby, armor scorched from battle, helmet in his hand, revealing tired eyes and a jaw clenched so tight it seemed fused. He didn't. Look at Keeler. He looked at the stars through the reinforced viewport. And when he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. Guttural, they felt that. Taya blinked. Felt what? The purge, the fire, the hollow. They watch for. Movement. They wait in the void. But when they feel pain ours, or theirs, they come. Before she could ask more, the ship's systems flickered, then dimmed. Then a siren began to wail one. The refugees hadn't heard before. Deep, distant. It wasn't fast like the other alerts. It was slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Every pulse made the walls shake. Light switched from red to white. Symbols flashed on the upper consoles. Human crew in the command ring froze. Commander Rourke's voice boomed through the speakers raw, filled with urgency. All personnel. Prepare for. Impact. Hollow scout swarm detected. 8 minutes to contact. Code black. All decks to combat status. Non-combatants. Brace for trauma. No further warnings. Outside the viewport, space changed. It started as tiny black specks appearing near the far end of the system. But they weren't ships. They moved too fast. Bent light around them. Shifted. Unnaturally. Hundreds of them. Growing closer by the second. Taya leaned forward. They're not even flying. They're falling. One of the human engineers corrected her. They descend. That's their nature. They fall like knives. Land carve. Sergeant Kell barked orders, snapping every human crew member into motion. The Harbinger began to transform. Walls retracted. Panels opened. Turrets rose from hidden compartments. Defense drones swarmed the corridors like metal insects. Armor. Plating along the ship's hull unfolded like wings thick black, terrifying. What once looked like an ugly freighter now revealed its true form, a predator, and they were no longer alone. Other human ships entered formation, massive, ancient, grim vessels, each with names painted in fading, white, script across their hulls. HS Revenant, HS Widowmaker, HS Eclipse. All Deathworld ships. All monsters. Already turned to Kel. What do we do? You do nothing, he said sharply. You sit, you breathe, you hope. But the hollow, if they get in, Kel nodded once. If they get in, we lose the ship. He looked to the sky now, the swarm visible across the stars like a dark rain falling sideways through space. The lead hollow vessels were nearly there. Taya could see their forms more clearly now, jagged, bone-white arcs with tails like blades, each one swarming with tendrils. Not grown, not built, something in between. Living machines. They don't communicate. Taya asked quietly. They speak in silence, Kel replied. In fear, in erasure. They don't want land or resources. They want memory erased. They feed on existence. If they win, you won't just die, you'll be forgotten. Swarm hit. Not gently. The first wave smashed into the outer defense screen dozens of hollow. Scouts spiraling toward the Harbinger like suicidal. Daggers. The point defense systems activated instantly. Blazing streaks of orange and blue ripped across the darkness. Human gunners tracked them with unshakable calm, cutting them down one by one. But for every hollow ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The sky outside lit up like a storm of fire from every viewport. Refugees watched the war unfold. The Harbinger shook violently as the second wave struck this time. Larger creatures, drones the size of fighter ships, slamming into the hull and crawling along it, slicing into the metal with razor appendages. The humans responded fast, venting specific sections of the outer hull, exposing the attackers to space, and then torching them with plasma bursts. Each scream was more like a vibration, a psychic stab that echoed in the minds of every living thing on board. Mikkel clutched his ears. Taya held him tighter, and then the breach warning came. Hull penetration detected. Section 17G internal combat teams dispatched. Inside the ship, the hollow had made it inside. The gunfire began almost immediately. Inside the halls, inside the walls. The monsters came with no shape, no pattern, fluid limbs, barbed tongues, acidic blood. The human soldiers fought with fury. No panic, just relentless precision. Explosive rounds, flamethrowers, melee blades made of vibrating alloy. They did not back down. Taya watched in horror as 2 hollow beasts entered the edge of the core ring's shield wall. The soldiers moved instantly. One tackled the creature, driving a blade through its spine. The other pulled out a device and jammed it into the beast's face. It didn't explode, it collapsed, folded inward, as if it had never existed at all. Was that? Taya whispered. Kel didn't answer at first. Then, memory bomb. It doesn't kill the hollow. It deletes them from physics. He reloaded his weapon. But we're running low. Through the chaos, the floating child killer remained, untouched. He drifted behind a transparent field, eyes still softly glowing. Then, he spoke. His voice wasn't his own. It echoed through every wall, every corridor. They see you now, the flame of man, still burning, still proud, still ugly. Every soldier froze. One by one, lights on the hollow ships blinked. Then, the largest hollow ship moved forward. It wasn't a scout. It was a mother. A queen. Kel's eyes went wide. Full retreat to the Nexus gate. Get everyone off this ship now. Commander Rourke's voice shouted back from the comms negative. We hold the line. Light the hammer. Prepare to charge the main gun. Kel cursed. He's going to use the core. Taya blinked. What does that mean? Kel looked at her, eyes hollow now. It means he's turning the ship into a spear. The fires still burned in the corridors of the Harbinger. Chunks of hollow flesh clung to the bulkheads, hissing with acidic blood that even the cleaning drones avoided. The stench of death and ionized metal filled the ship, but none of it compared to the silence that followed the cannon's final blast. Space was no longer filled with hollow screams or warning sirens. It was just Still, but stillness never lasted long in a Deathworld ship. Taya stood at the viewport of the refugee deck. Staring into the abyss of stars, she should have felt relief. The Hollow were gone for now. Queen had been slain, the swarm broken, and Subject Zero was locked back in containment after limping back with a grin that didn't quite belong to a man. But relief didn't come, only dread. Because if this was victory, then what would defeat look like? The refugees had seen it. 2. The monster. The battle. The fire. They no longer feared the Hollow as much as they feared what protected them now. Mothers pulled their children closer. Elders spoke in hushed tones. A young girl had whispered to her brother just hours ago, "I don't think we were saved. I think we were claimed." Commander Rourke didn't wait long. Within hours of the battle, he summoned every leader of the refugee faction's tribal elders. Fleet captains, civic ministers, and brought them to the Harbinger's war table. Taya was asked to represent her deck, not because she wanted to, but because she was one of the few survivors who hadn't broken inside. Kel stood beside her as they entered the war chamber. Walls lined with flickering maps, red markers, threat. Readings that never stopped. A large hollow projection of the Orion Arm filled the air, showing zones of hollow corruption, slowly spreading like cancer through a galactic body. Rourke didn't waste time. "We can't run anymore," he said flatly. "The Hollow aren't chasing prey. They're erasing civilization. Planet by planet, species by species. You've seen what they do." An older refugee captain with deep-set eyes stepped forward. "Then why bring us here? You're soldiers. We're survivors." "You're not survivors anymore," Rourke replied. "You're combatants. Every soul we save strengthens our resistance. Every refugee we rescue becomes part of the war effort. You may not wear our uniforms, but you now live in our war." A tribal matriarch hissed. "You want us to fight for you?" Elle stepped forward. "No, with us. There's a difference." Another delegate, a scientist from a fallen world, adjusted his broken spectacles. "And what happens when you win? If the Hollow are defeated, do we go back to our lives, or are we just another piece of your empire?" Rourke's expression didn't change. "If we survive, we'll answer that question together. But if we lose, none of us will have lives to return to. You've seen the Hollow's purpose. They feed on history. On memory, if they consume. This system, your ancestors will vanish from time itself." The room fell silent. Taya looked around. Faces once proud, now drained. Hope and rage danced together behind tired eyes. The truth was obvious. They had nowhere else to go. The Harbinger might be a warship, but it was the last wall between them and extinction. Taya stepped forward. "Then let's make a pact," she said. Rourke turned toward her, curious. "You want us to join your war? Then treat us like warriors. Not cargo, not statistics. Give us training. Give us weapons. Give us our own command seats. Let our people stand beside yours." Rourke didn't hesitate. "Done," Kel blinked. "Sir, she's right," Rourke said. "The Hollow won't wait for us to build alliances slowly. If we're going to stand a chance, we need unity. Now." The pact was made. Blood was spilled, dashed literally, an ancient rite. Proposed by the matriarch, was held in the engine cathedral. Every leader, human and refugee alike, sliced their palms and marked the walls with their blood, side by side. The message was clear. We die together, or we survive together. Training began immediately. Taya was assigned to Kel's unit Echo. Flame, a rapid response, strike team composed of humans and hand-picked refugees. They weren't trusted yet, not fully. But trust wasn't the point. Unity through fire, that was the Harbinger's doctrine. They trained in gravity chambers. Simulated hollow mazes, zero-G melee, Neuralink targeting systems. The humans moved like veterans, efficient, ruthless. But Taya noticed something else. Too, they were afraid. Not of the Hollow, of Subject. Zero, he wasn't locked away, he trained with them. Taya watched him fight in the chamber, his blows faster than thought. His eyes always burning. He didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't blink, just fought. And whenever he finished a session, he would stop, look around the chamber, and whisper under his breath, "Not enough." She asked Kel once, "What does he mean?" Away, he remembers what it was like when Earth fell. Billions gone, cities turned to glass. And now that we're facing extinction again, he thinks it's his time to finish what he started. He thinks we're not angry enough yet. A week passed. Then the signal came. A distress beacon from a hidden resistance base buried deep inside a dead star cluster. It was faint, broken, but the message was clear. Hollow-infected local star. Sun dying. We have intelligence. Nest exfil before total collapse. Rourke didn't hesitate. The Harbinger changed course. The refugees, once passengers, now rushed. 2 stations. Gunners. Mechanics. Pettis stood beside human soldiers in a combat shuttle, holding a pulse rifle for the first time in her life. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was the first joint operation between humans and the broken. Survivors they had saved. And as the Harbinger raced toward the dying sun, Subject Zero waited. In silence near the launch bay, eyes glowing, fists clenched, whispering to himself again, "Not enough." The sun was bleeding. Tay had never seen a star like this, once golden, now crimson and swollen, its surface boiling with black fissures like veins of disease. From the Harbinger's bridge, it looked like a god's heart in its final beats. Solar flares twisted into spirals, pulled downward by an invisible force. Even the void felt wrong here, like the laws of physics were holding their breath. "This is where they're hiding?" she asked, her voice dry. Commander Rourke nodded, his jaw tight. "They're not hiding anymore. They're trapped." The Harbinger moved into the outer orbit of the decaying star. Radiation levels spiked. Hull shields flared blue. Kel leaned over the command table, tracing the signal path from the sun's outer layer to a small moon nestled in its dying gravity well. "Deep buried resistance outpost," he said. "Multiple encrypted pings, all coded within old Earth military protocols. Someone down there used to be one of ours." "And the Hollow?" Taya asked. "They're already here," Rourke replied. The tactical display lit up. Dozens of Hollow signatures, cloaked in heat waves, had encircled the moon. Most stayed motionless, waiting like predators before a kill. But a few were moving toward the sun. "They're feeding on it," whispered Taya. "They're turning the star itself into fuel." "Or a weapon," Rourke muttered. "If they corrupt the core, they can collapse the sun, and everything in this sector goes with it." He turned to the squad leaders, voice sharp. "This is the last stand. We're not just recovering survivors, we're securing intelligence that could turn this war. Get in, get them out. Blow the moon if you have to." And if the Hollow reached the core, his eyes drifted toward the sealed door behind them. "We unleash the Revenant." Asterisk, asterisk, the drop was hell. The closer the shuttles got to the moon, the more the sun pulled on them, gravity fluctuating, radiation flaring, space-time warping like liquid glass. Taya sat across from Kel and 2 other soldiers, her hand shaking slightly on her pulse rifle. "Don't think," Kel said. "Just move." Their shuttles slammed into the surface, hard. Dust and fire sprayed upward. The hatch hissed open, and they ran immediately under fire from Hollow sentries. Creatures formed from ash and bone, their weapons like bleeding claws. But Taya didn't freeze this time. She fired, she moved, she survived. They fought their way through ancient tunnels, carved deep into the moon, metal walls scorched and trembling. Bodies, both human and alien, lined the paths, twisted in poses of final resistance. Every room told a story of sacrifice. But in the main chamber, deep beneath the surface, they found them. 3 survivors, 1 dying, and a data core, a resistance. Leader, barely conscious, shoved the drive into Kel's hands. They woke something in the star. Not just holotech. It's older, bigger. They're trying to hatch it. Taya's blood ran cold. "Hatch what?" he tried to answer, but died before the words came. Above them, the moon shook, and the sun screamed. Not a metaphor, an actual sound piped through their cums. The hollow were tearing into the star's core now. New presence had awakened, vast, ancient, starborn. Rourke's voice crackled through the cums. We just detected a spike in mass at the heart of the star. Whatever they're trying to release. Breaching, extract now. But they were surrounded. The hollow began pouring into the lower tunnels, thousands of them. More than they'd ever seen. Clawing, crawling, teleporting in fractal bursts of light. There was no way back to the surface. Kel looked at Taya. Time for the Revenant. She swallowed. You think even he can survive this? Not survive. Win. He activated the beacon, and within minutes, they heard it. The Harbinger's voice. Through the tunnels, amplified through steel and blood, Subject 0 inbound. He didn't land. Fell straight from orbit. A meteor wrapped in rage. He crashed through the moon's crust like it was paper and hit the hollow swarm with the force of a small god. Fists burned. Eyes lit. Every scream echoed down the corridors as he tore through the creatures, not like a soldier, but like a force of nature. Taya, Kel, and the remaining squad began running behind him. He cleared the path, paved it in fire, and shattered. Bone. Every time he took a wound, his blood burned like plasma and sealed the hole. Every time he fell, he stood again. They reached the surface, but the sun was already dying. The hollow had dug into its heart. Now something massive was rising from within, a shape larger than planets, waking, stretching, a hollow god. Forged from solar mass and stolen memories, the Harbinger broadcasted a final message. We cannot allow this thing to live. Detonate the moon. Kel armed the core charges. Everyone aboard? Now. They ran. Shuttles launched. Subject 0 remained. Taya screamed at the cum. We have to get him out. But Rourke answered with grim finality. He volunteered. He's staying. Subject 0 stood on the cracked surface of the moon, staring into the rising beast inside the sun. It was magnificent, terrifying, glorious. He cracked his knuckles, whispered to himself, now it's enough, and charged straight into the star. The moon detonated behind him. The hollow. God screamed, and then everything turned white. Asterisk, asterisk, silence followed. Then stars. The Harbinger emerged from the blast zone, hull battered, shields gone, but alive. The hollow. We're gone not just from the system, from everywhere. Retreating, screaming, whatever. Subject 0 had done inside that starite didn't just destroy the god, it terrified them. Taya stood at the viewport again. The blood pact had held. The refugees and humans had fought as one, and now, maybe, just maybe, they could win this war. Kel walked beside her. Quiet. You think he survived? She asked. Kel looked out into the stars and smiled. I think he became what he always was, fire too big to burn out.